Snow fluttered softly outside the large glass window, painting a white, hazy picture over the bustling city of Geneva. But inside the airport's private lounge, the space was eerily silent, as if time itself had been frozen. This was not peace, but an emptiness wrapped in velvet and the gentle melody of a hidden piano. This was Evelyn Thorne's world. She sat in her custom-designed wheelchair not for mobility, but for display. The chair gleamed like a work of art, yet it was a steel cage that had imprisoned her for 2 years. Evelyn's eyes drifted across the leather armchairs, the sculpted statues, and the carefully placed designer handbags. All of it was perfect orderly, yet devoid of any warmth. She was not a passenger, but a costly piece of decoration, parked in a corner, elegant, silent, and forgotten. Her fingers, long and meticulously manicured, wore a delicate white gold ring. It trembled slightly as she tried to hold a fine porcelain coffee cup. The quiet clinking of the cup and saucer echoed like a small explosion in the stillness. No one looked up. No one offered help. The world continued to turn around her, but it never turned towards her. Evelyn hated the feeling of being so visibly present, yet so utterly invisible. Each day was a quiet struggle. A struggle with her disobedient body, with her solitude, and with the perfect image she was forced to maintain. The memory of the accident suddenly rushed back. Not the screech of tires or the crash, but a horrifying moment of silence. She had been trying to leave to escape the gigantic shadow of her father, to escape the ruthless business empire he had spent his life building. She had driven away one early morning hoping to start over, even if it was just a normal life. But the car had tragically lost control, plummeting down a hill. She woke up in the hospital, her body immobile, and her father standing beside her, his face without a single expression. "You've ruined everything, Evelyn," he had said, his voice cold. "But I will fix it. You will still be my perfect Evelyn Thorne." It was not an accident. It was a cruel arrangement, a way to force her to stay, to be dependent. Now, every one of her days was an act. On the other side of the lounge, in an area for staff or commercial passengers with delayed flights, another world was unfolding. Liam Carter knelt beside his daughter Hazel. He was helping her adjust the strap of her pink backpack, which had slipped. He wore a worn flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal calloused forearms. Weariness was etched on his face, but it was the weariness of a working man, a man accustomed to building a life with his own hands. He didn't belong here, a place of marble and branded luggage. But he didn't care. Hazel, a little girl with big round eyes, leaned against Liam and whispered, "Daddy, why is she sitting all by herself?" Liam looked up. He saw Evelyn, a woman in a wheelchair. She was not fragile. On the contrary, she looked strong in her own way, as if she was too tired to ever ask for help. She wore a champagne-colored silk blouse tucked neatly into beige trousers, her long dark hair in a low bun. A leather handbag lay dormant beside her, her legs crossed as if she were protecting the last bit of dignity she had left. The coffee cup in her hand trembled again. Liam's eyes narrowed, not with pity, but with recognition. There was no assistant, no family, no warmth from the sea of people around her who only looked through her as if through an airport window. He stood up, brushing off his old jeans. "I'll be right back," he said to Hazel in a warm, low voice. He walked slowly across the marble floor, not like a hero rushing to the rescue, but simply as one person paying attention to another. As he neared, Evelyn noticed his worn boots first. They were so real. When she looked up, their eyes met. She stiffened. She was not sure. Most strangers who approached her wanted something, a reaction, a glance, or worse, her attention. But this man did not reach out to touch her or her wheelchair. He simply knelt beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Mind if I keep you company until your flight takes off?" he asked. There was no fake smile, no pity, just a genuine presence. Evelyn blinked. Her lips parted, unsure what to say. Then, as if something had just cracked open, she gave a slight nod. He pulled up a nearby chair, sat down beside her, and asked nothing else. They said nothing. They didn't need to. At least not yet. For the first time in hours, Evelyn felt she was no longer a statue in a painting, but a person. In the distance, Hazel watched them, her fingers fiddling with the crayon she always carried in her coat pocket. She began to draw quietly on the back of a flight ticket. And in that silent moment, the real story began. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was a vast stillness, a kind that one didn't want to break too soon, because it was saying things deeper than words. Evelyn held her coffee cup tight with both hands, steadying it from trembling. She wasn't just steadying her hands, she was calming the unease in her heart. People didn't usually talk to her, not if they didn't have a motive, not if they didn't stare at the wheelchair first. But this man just sat there. His presence was both solid and gentle. "Private jet?" he asked softly, his voice without curiosity. She gave a small nod. "Delayed. Hydraulic system issue." Her voice was soft but precise, trained yet fragile. Liam gave a slight smile. "Ours was canceled. Commercial. We're hoping to get a standby seat on the next one." He turned his head, glancing at the little girl sitting on the floor, engrossed in her drawing. "Your daughter?" Evelyn asked. "Hazel," he said with a nod. "She's 10, loves to draw, and thinks vending machine sandwiches are gourmet food." That made the corner of Evelyn's mouth turn up slightly, not quite a smile, but very close. "I'm Evelyn," she said after a moment of silence. "Liam Carter," he replied, extending his hand. He didn't look at the wheelchair once, but directly at her face. She hesitated, then shook his hand. Her hand was cool and slender. His was rough, but warm. "People usually only talk to me when they need something," she murmured, her gaze drifting away. "An update, a signature, a news headline. You're the first person to look me in the eye today." Liam didn't answer right away. He simply nodded, accepting her truth without trying to console it. "I saw your hand shaking," he said quietly. "Thought maybe you needed company." Her eyes became sharp. She wasn't used to people noticing that without making her feel pitied. "It's a neurological disorder," she said softly. "Slow recovery. Some days are better than others. You don't owe me an explanation." She looked at him again, not with suspicion, but with scrutiny, as if trying to find what was wrong. But there was nothing. In the distance, Hazel stood up, clutching her finished little drawing. She hesitated for a moment, then started walking towards them. Evelyn saw the girl and nudged Liam with her elbow. "Your daughter is coming." He turned just as Hazel arrived, shyly holding out the small piece of paper. "I drew this," she said. "For you." Evelyn blinked and looked down. It was a child's crayon sketch. She had drawn Evelyn in her wheelchair, Liam beside her, and Juniper in the middle, holding both of their hands. Evelyn's breath caught. She put a hand to her mouth, then slowly reached out, taking the drawing with careful fingers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Hazel smiled. "You looked lonely. You're not anymore." Evelyn looked back at Liam, and this time her eyes were misty, and right then something shifted. The wall that had surrounded her, polished, silent, and professional, had begun to crack at the edges. "I don't remember the last time someone did something just for me," she said softly. Hazel climbed into Liam's lap and leaned against him. Evelyn looked at the drawing again, then carefully placed it inside her handbag, as if it were a fragile piece of glass. The lounge began to grow noisier as airport staff passed through, announcing more flight delays. But something inside Evelyn had moved forward. Something that had been stuck not physically, but emotionally. And she knew it had nothing to do with the flight. It had to do with someone, a child, a stranger, and a man with quiet eyes who had seen her. Not as a person to be pitied, but as a person worth sitting with. The lounge lights softened as time passed. Somewhere far off, rain began to patter against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. At first it was a light drizzle, then it became steadier. A kind of rain that had the potential to make the world quiet. Evelyn watched the rain, her chin tilted slightly, her fingers unconsciously stroking the folds of Hazel's drawing, which was now held tightly between her hands, like a talisman. Liam sat beside her still, and solid as if he had decided this was the most natural place for him to be in the entire airport. Hazel had curled up on the chair next to her father, her head resting on his arm, her eyelids fluttering. Evelyn glanced at the girl, then back at Liam. "She trusts very easily," she said softly. Liam nodded. "She notices things before I do. The silence in other people. When something's not right, it's like she feels the world first, then asks about it later." Evelyn let out a small breath. A warm feeling in her chest was growing. That's a gift. Most adults do the opposite. There was a brief pause between them, only the sound of the rain. Then Evelyn asked a question she had been holding inside. "When the plane comes, what happens?" Liam looked at her. She wasn't asking about the procedure. She was asking about what came after, about the end of this random moment. "You'll get on the plane," he said gently, "and the world will keep turning." Her voice dropped. "And I'll go back to being lonely." He didn't correct her. He didn't offer platitudes. He just let the honesty hang between them, like a shared truth. "I used to think it was the wheelchair," she said, after a moment of silence. "That people were afraid to get close to me, because they didn't know what to say. But now I think it's because they assume I'm already well taken care of." She looked up at him. "But they're wrong." The words were fragile but heavy. Liam leaned forward slightly, his voice lower. "You don't need to explain your life to me, Evelyn. Not here. Not in this place of noise and delays." She smiled a genuine smile, a slight curve at the corners of her lips. "But I want to." And so she told him about the loneliness that didn't come from a disability, but from expectation. About the image her father needed her to maintain, polished, poised, perfect, even when her body betrayed her after the accident. About the silence that grew inside her every time people looked away. "I stopped expecting kindness," she said. "It was easier that way." Liam's voice was a whisper. "Until today." Her eyes lifted, meeting his. "Yes," she said, "until today." They didn't notice the loud announcements over the loudspeaker. Didn't care that another hour had passed. Something else was arriving. Not a plane, but a feeling that they both hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not loud, just present. Hazel stirred beside them, yawning. "I think my drawing made you feel better," she mumbled. Evelyn smiled down at her. "It did, sweetie. It really did." A uniformed attendant suddenly approached from the end of the lounge, a clipboard in his hand. "Ms. Thorne," he asked, "your aircraft is ready for departure." Evelyn took a slow breath. Reality pulled her back to the present like a rope around her shoulders. She turned to Liam. "I guess it's time." He stood up with her, not in a formal way, not in a distant way, but like a friend who understood the weight of a goodbye. "Safe travels," he said softly. But as she reached for the wheelchair's wheels to turn, she stopped. Something surprised her. Would you walk me to the gate? He didn't hesitate. Of course. And together, for the first time that day, Evelyn moved. Liam walked beside her. They began to make their way towards the entrance to the private jet area. No longer strangers, but something that had just begun. The corridor to the private gate was quiet, too quiet. Each step echoed on the marble floor like a countdown. Beyond the glass wall, Evelyn's plane gleamed in the light rain. Its stairs lowered the door ajar. But she didn't head straight for it. She and Liam stood together just past the threshold. Hazel held her father's hand on one side, her drawing kit clutched in the other, her eyes darting between the plane and Evelyn. "I don't want to say goodbye," Evelyn said abruptly, her voice just a breath. Liam turned surprised, not by the words, but because he felt the exact same way. "It doesn't have to be forever," he replied. Evelyn gave a short, light laugh. "That's what people say right before they disappear." There was a long pause, a kind of silence that held more than stillness. It was filled with unspoken things, unexchanged glances, and a quiet fear of breaking something real by naming it too soon. "I'm not very good at this," Liam admitted. "Talking to people like this, letting them into my life." Evelyn turned her wheelchair towards him, her brows softening. "Then why did you come over?" He looked down at his daughter. "Because Hazel asked me why you were sitting alone. And when I looked over for a moment, I saw myself." That made her stop. "I know what it feels like to be in a crowded place and feel invisible. I used to be that person." Her voice was trembling now. "And now, you're the only one I can't stop seeing." Hazel, sensing the heaviness in the air, leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Evelyn's neck without warning. Evelyn blinked, startled, then hugged the little girl tightly. "I don't want you to go either," Hazel whispered. Something inside Evelyn broke, but it was not something that made her feel weak. She looked at Liam. Her voice was soft but steady. "I don't want to go either, but I don't know how not to." Liam knelt beside her now, at eye level again, just as he had been when he first approached her hours ago. "You said you stopped expecting kindness," he said. "Maybe this is where you start again." Their eyes locked. Then Evelyn did something she hadn't done in months. She leaned forward slowly, lowered her hands to the wheelchair's wheels, and turned them herself. It was not a grand gesture, but it was her choice, her movement a signal. Liam stood up and looked towards the private check-in desk. The attendant was still waiting patiently, clipboard in hand. Then Evelyn asked softly, "Is there a place to get coffee around here before I board?" Liam smiled. "There's a terrible vending machine near the employee area." Her lips curved up again. "Perfect." They turned and walked away together, not towards the plane, but back the way they had come. Not far, just a few minutes more to borrow. And that's when Liam gently placed his hand on the handles behind her wheelchair, not to steer, but to walk with her. And Evelyn didn't stop him. The vending area wasn't far, just a short distance from the VIP lounge, tucked away in a corridor where the polished marble floor gave way to duller tiles. It was quieter here, more forgotten, the air humming with the buzz of fluorescent lights. Evelyn didn't mind. She was moving on her own, very slowly. Her arms weren't strong enough. The trembling came back many times, but every inch she moved forward was hers. Not her nurse's, not her aide's, but her own. And Liam walked beside her the whole way, never touching the chair unless it wobbled slightly, never rushing her. Hazel skipped ahead, humming an indistinct, contented tune, her small backpack bouncing on her back. At the coffee machine, Evelyn let out a breathless laugh. "This is worse than I imagined." Liam grinned. "I told you it builds character." They both stared at the blinking buttons, the faded labels. Finally, Liam pressed espresso, and 2 small paper cups slid out. He carefully handed one to her. She held it with both hands, taking slow sips, and grimaced. "Absolutely terrible," he said, raising his own cup in a mock toast, "but worth it." There was another pause, but this time it was different. Comfortable. Shared. Evelyn leaned back slightly in her wheelchair. "You know I haven't moved on my own in weeks." Liam turned to her, his gaze steady. "Not even to cross a room," she continued. "Someone always does it for me. My father's staff, therapists, housekeepers. Everyone helps." She looked down at her lap. "And yet I've never felt so stuck. Until today." Liam offered no encouragement. He didn't need to. She was already changing on her own. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to decide where I was going," she whispered. Hazel had settled on the floor nearby, taking out her crayons again, drawing something new. Liam leaned against the wall, sipping his coffee. "Have you remembered now?" Evelyn looked at him, then softly, very softly asked, "Would it be crazy if I didn't get on the plane?" He blinked, not in surprise, but with hope. "Maybe a little," he said. "But then most of the best things in life start that way." This time she smiled brightly without restraint. The smile softened her entire face. Then her phone buzzed. Her eyes fell to the screen. The caller ID read, "Dad Priority Line." Her smile vanished. Her thumb hovered over the button. Liam watched her. "What are you afraid he'll say?" he asked gently. She stared at the screen. "Nothing. That's the problem. He won't yell, he won't ask. He'll just assume I'm already on the plane doing what I've always done. And if you don't..." Evelyn looked up again, and the way Liam was looking at her. No one had ever looked at her like that, as if she were allowed to choose her own ending. "I want to see where this cup of coffee leads me," she said softly. Liam tilted his coffee cup towards her. "Then don't miss your chance." She silenced the call. Her hand trembled, but this time it wasn't from her illness, but from courage. A decision was taking shape. And in Hazel's lap, the new drawing was finished. It again featured the 3 of them, Evelyn, Liam, and Hazel. But this time they were outside in the rain, laughing. And Evelyn was standing on her own 2 feet. The rain outside had slowed to a drizzle, leaving hazy streaks on the tall windows. The private jet was still waiting, its engine humming softly. The stairs lowered the crew watching the gate, but Evelyn Thorne was no longer moving toward it. She sat at a small table near the vending machine, sipping her bitter coffee from a paper cup as if it were the finest coffee in the world. Sitting opposite her was Liam Carter, his arms crossed, his gaze resting gently on her as if he wasn't waiting for anything, just simply being there. Hazel had dozed off next to them, her head on her father's coat, her hands clutching her drawings. Evelyn kept glancing at her phone, not because she was waiting for a call, but because it hadn't rung again. Her father had given up, or perhaps he never realized she hadn't boarded the plane. "I don't know where I'm going," she whispered abruptly. "If I stay, if I don't get on the plane, I don't have a plan, no schedule, no one waiting for me." Liam looked at her, his voice steady. "That's not the same as being lost." She blinked, then nodded. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt it not control, but ownership of her time, her voice the shape of her day. And in that fragile space she asked softly, "Can I show you something?" He nodded. She reached into her handbag and slowly pulled out a thick leather folder, the kind that spoke of corporate silence and legacy. She slid it across the table. "My father's agenda for me," she said. "Press releases, events, strategic partnerships. Every hour was planned." Liam opened it, flipping through the pages. The lines, the checklists, the charts. Then Evelyn took a pen from her bag, and with one long, fluid stroke, she drew a line through all of it, right down the middle. "I'm not going back," she said. Liam looked at her, not shocked, just proud. She closed the folder and set it aside like a person who had just put down an old life. "I don't know what's next, but I think I want to figure it out with people who don't expect me to be anyone but myself." Liam's eyes never left hers. "Then you're in good company." Hazel stirred, blinking at them sleepily. "Did she miss her flight?" she mumbled. Evelyn leaned forward, brushing a lock of hair from the girl's forehead. "No, sweetie. I just changed my destination." Hazel smiled and reached into her crayon pouch, pulling out a fresh sheet of paper. "Then I'll draw a new picture." Outside, the plane door closed. The stairs lifted. And inside, Evelyn Thorne smiled as she watched it fly away. Not with regret, but with relief. Somewhere up high, planes sliced through the clouds, racing against time. But here in this quiet corner of the airport, a woman had taken her first real step in months. Not with her feet, but with her heart. Liam reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. She did not pull away. And for the first time, she did not feel she had to move, because where she was with them felt like the perfect place to begin. Her father's private jet, belonging to Mr. William Thorne, had long taken off, leaving a significant void on the runway and in Evelyn's schedule. Yet in her heart, it wasn't an absence, but a liberation. She remained at the small table by the vending machine, sipping her bitter coffee, its sharp taste a reminder of a reality no longer under anyone's control. Liam Carter sat opposite, quietly observing her. He didn't ask how she had made her decision or offer advice. He was simply present, and the calm in his eyes was something Evelyn had never experienced. It was the gaze of a man who wanted nothing more than to share a moment. "I didn't think I would do it," Evelyn whispered, her voice still filled with wonder. "I was trained to be perfect, a puppet." Liam gave a soft nod, understanding. "A person's life isn't a play, Evelyn. Life is about choices." Hazel, now awake, sat on a chair, her clear eyes watching them. She took out her last drawing, the one of Evelyn standing straight in the rain, and placed it on the table. "She already chose," Hazel said with certainty. "She chose to have coffee with Daddy and me." Hazel's innocent words dissolved the tension in Evelyn. A genuine smile returned to her lips, the smile of someone who had just discovered a precious secret. Just then, the phone on the table vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a priority call, but a text message. Evelyn's expression grew tense as she read the content. It was from Marcus, her personal assistant. "Madam, we have been notified you are not on the flight. The boss is very angry. Could you please tell me where you are?" Evelyn felt her chest tighten. It was an invisible chain severed, yet still carrying its weight. She felt an urge to run, to find a place no one could ever find her. Liam noticed the change on her face. He gently placed his hand on hers, not to control, but to reassure. "It's okay," he said. "Do you want to talk to him?" Evelyn shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, you don't understand. My father, he never accepts weakness. He won't ask for a reason. He'll just force me to come back." "Then don't let him," Liam replied, his voice still firm. "This is your choice, not his." But the fear in Evelyn was immense. She recalled her father's words after the accident, how he had turned her into a perfect symbol for his empire, hiding the truth of her condition. Their relationship was not that of a father and daughter, but of an owner and his product. "My accident wasn't an accident," she blurted out. "I was trying to run away. My father, he orchestrated everything to make sure I would stay." Liam listened in silence. He showed no surprise or fear. He simply looked into her eyes as if to say, "I believe you, and I am here." Hazel gently placed her hand on Evelyn's. "You won't be scared anymore," the little girl said. "My daddy is here." The warmth from Hazel's small hand and Liam's sincere gaze gave Evelyn strength. She raised her hand and deleted Marcus's message. For the first time in her life, she decided not to reply, not to explain. That small act of liberation created a crack in the protective wall she had built. Through that crack, she could see another path, a path yet to be drawn. "I'm a landscape architect," Liam said suddenly, as if to change the mood. "I design gardens and parks. I believe every space can tell a story. Your life is the same." "And what about my story?" Evelyn asked. "Your story is still being written," Liam said, a brilliant smile on his face. "And you are the only one holding the pen." Evelyn looked at Hazel's drawing, then at Liam. She felt a new wind blowing into her life, a wind of freedom and hope. "Then tell me about your stories," she said, her voice no longer trembling. Liam began to talk about the gardens he had designed, about how he transformed desolate plots of land into vibrant spaces. He spoke about Hazel and her love for plants. In that moment, a new conversation, a new life had begun. The conversation between Evelyn and Liam was like cool water seeping into the arid garden of her soul. He didn't ask about billion-dollar business projects or extravagant parties, but spoke only of honest, simple things, soil trees, and how a tiny seed could grow into a forest. As Evelyn listened, each of his stories opened a new window where she could smell damp earth and see the green of leaves instead of just cold numbers and contracts. "I designed a park for a school in a rural area," Liam recounted, his eyes lighting up. "I wanted to create a space where kids could run and roll on the grass and learn to love nature. No expensive statues, no marble paths, just trees, flowers, and laughter." Evelyn smiled. "My father always wanted to build a Japanese garden in our mansion. He wanted everything to be perfect to follow a certain rule. But I liked wildflowers and the natural vines growing on the walls. My father said they had no vision. Vision isn't something money can buy." Liam said, his eyes meeting Evelyn's. "It comes from the heart, and it belongs to the person who creates it." Liam's words touched a deep place within Evelyn. She remembered the drawings she had hidden since the accident sketches of dreamlike gardens, where ancient trees reached for the sky and small streams gurgled. She had once had a dream, a passion, but it had been buried under her father's pressure and control. Hazel, sitting nearby, suddenly placed her hand on the table. "Daddy, can we draw a garden for her?" she asked with sparkling eyes. Evelyn smiled, touched by Hazel's innocence. "You can draw anything you want, Hazel." Liam also smiled. "My daughter always has great ideas." As Hazel took out her paper and crayons, Evelyn looked at Liam. "Do you believe in miracles?" she asked, her voice soft. "Just a few hours ago, I was a prisoner in my own life. Now I'm sitting here drinking terrible coffee and talking about wild gardens. It feels like my life has taken a completely different turn." "I believe in moments," Liam said. "Moments where we dare to change. A miracle isn't when impossible things happen to us, but when we make those impossible things happen ourselves." And just then, another impossible thing occurred. The lounge door opened, and Marcus, Evelyn's assistant, walked in. His face showed clear anxiety, but when he saw Evelyn, he instantly changed his demeanor. "Madam," Marcus said, his voice rigid, "I received word that you changed your mind. Mr. Thorne wants to speak with you." "I have nothing to say to him," Evelyn replied, her voice remaining steady. Marcus looked flustered. He had never seen Evelyn act this way. "But he is very angry. He says you are damaging the family's reputation. The family's reputation, or his? Evelyn asked, her voice sharp. Marcus, I have made my decision. I do not wish to be disturbed. Marcus turned to Liam, his eyes full of hostility. Who are you? What did you say to her? Liam calmly stood up, showing no fear. I am just a father trying to help his daughter understand that the world can be a good place, and I think I also helped another person understand that. Marcus said no more. He understood he had lost control. Evelyn's eyes now held not fear, but resolve. He turned and left. Evelyn looked at Liam, an overwhelming sense of gratitude filling her heart. He had not only helped her find her courage, but also helped her face her past. Hazel held the new drawing in her hand. It depicted a wild garden with a large old tree and a small path. At the end of the path, 3 people stood, no longer simple crayon strokes, but figures full of hope and freedom. Are we going there? Hazel asked, pointing at the picture. Evelyn looked at the drawing, then at Liam. She knew the answer, and it wasn't on an airplane. In the quiet of the vending machine area, Evelyn felt a powerful urge she had never known before. After Marcus left, the tension was replaced by an emptiness that needed to be filled. She looked into Liam's steady eyes and realized this was her only chance to tell the truth. A truth she had buried for 2 years. The accident. It wasn't just an accident. Evelyn began, her voice trembling but resolute. I told you I was trying to escape. My father, William Thorne, never accepted weakness. He always wanted me to be a perfect version of himself. And Evelyn Thorne, who never makes mistakes, a powerful and untouchable heiress. But I'm not like that. I fell in love, Liam. Liam listened in silence, his eyes filled with empathy. Hazel, sensing the heavy atmosphere, held Evelyn's hand tightly, giving her strength. He was a landscape architect just like you. Evelyn continued, her voice catching. He helped me see the world through different eyes. He showed me the beauty of wild gardens, of wildflowers, of things that were imperfect but real. He was the only person who saw the real Evelyn, not Mr. Thorne's daughter. We planned to run away together to a faraway place to start a new life. I thought I could escape that golden cage. Tears began to stream down Evelyn's cheeks. But my father found out. He couldn't accept it. He said I had betrayed him, betrayed the entire family. He ordered me to end the relationship. But I refused. So he did something cruel. Evelyn took a deep breath, the pain in her voice piercing Liam's heart. He orchestrated the accident. Not to kill me, but to ruin me. He wanted me to live a life of dependence, a life where, without him, I would be nothing. He wanted me to become a perfect piece of jewelry, imprisoned in a wheelchair, but still powerful enough to represent his empire. Liam and Hazel were completely silent. Liam understood Evelyn's pain, the pain of someone who had lost all hope and had to live in a world she never wanted. Is he still alive? Liam asked, his voice gentle. Evelyn shook her head, tears falling. No. My father made him disappear. He erased all traces, all memories of him. He told me he died in the accident. But I know that's not the truth. I know he's still alive somewhere, and I will find him. So, what was your goal with the plane? Liam asked. Were you going to look for him? Evelyn wiped her tears, her eyes more determined than ever. I used to think so. I had planned to use all my father's connections and resources to find him. But now I realize that would just be another form of dependence. I don't want to live a life dictated by my father, even if it's to search for a lost love. I want to live my own life to find my own way. I want to be free. Liam nodded, understanding. And you chose that path. I chose it, Evelyn said, a radiant but tearful smile on her face. But I don't know where that path will lead me. I don't know either, Liam replied. But I know one thing for sure. We can go together. Hazel patted Evelyn's hand, her face bright. We'll go together, and I'll draw everything we see. This picture, she said, pointing to the drawing of the wild garden, will be the first one. And then we'll have a whole book full of pictures. Evelyn looked at the drawing, then at Liam and Hazel. She had lost her first love, but she had found something even more precious. A family not by blood, but by love and sincerity. A family that had helped her find herself again. Evelyn no longer looked at the drawing as a distant image, but as a promise. A promise of a future she could create herself, not a future already drawn. She held Hazel's small hand tightly, feeling the girl's warmth and innocent trust. Liam sat opposite, his eyes always on her, as if to say he would always be there, not just to listen, but to walk with her. I hid my drawings, Evelyn said, her voice now soft and full of nostalgia. Sketches of gardens, of streams, of small paths. That was where I could escape my father's world, at least in my mind. He, the man I loved, he once told me those drawings were my soul. Liam smiled. Then we'll find them again, and we'll make them real. How do you know? Evelyn asked, her eyes wide with surprise. Because I did the same thing, Liam replied. After my wife passed away, I lost my will to live. I abandoned all my projects, all my plans. But Hazel, she gave me a crayon and a piece of paper. She said, "Daddy, draw a beautiful garden for Mommy. She would love it." Evelyn looked at Hazel, who was smiling. "And you did?" "I did," Liam said. "And I realized that even when something is lost, we can still create new things. The gardens I design now are not just architectural works, but tributes, promises of a more beautiful life." Evelyn felt her chest warm. She was no longer alone. She had found two strangers who understood her better than anyone else. "So, Ms. Evelyn," Liam said, his voice full of cheerfulness, "where shall we go first? Shall we start looking for those forgotten drawings?" Evelyn nodded, a radiant smile on her lips. "We'll find them, and we'll create a wild garden. A garden without rules, without pre-paved paths. A garden of my own." Hazel clapped her hands, cheering. "Yay, I'll draw a picture of that garden, a really big picture." Evelyn looked at Liam, then at Hazel. She had lost love, but she had found something even more precious. A family, a hope, and a new life unconstrained by anything. She was ready to rewrite her own story, starting with a wild garden and an old truck. The bright morning sun shone through the large window, illuminating the half-empty paper coffee cup on the table. Evelyn's phone remained silent, with no calls or messages from her father. That silence once again caused a strange feeling. Was it the silence of someone who had given up, or was a greater storm being prepared? Evelyn didn't know. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She felt liberated. "Our commercial flight is about to depart," Liam said, interrupting Evelyn's thoughts. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a hint of regret, but also great respect. "It's time for us to go." Hazel stood up and took Evelyn's hand. "You'll come see me, right? We'll draw that wild garden, won't we?" Evelyn smiled, gently stroking the little girl's hair. "Of course, Hazel. We'll do it, I promise." Liam knelt down, meeting Evelyn at eye level. "You've made your choice, Evelyn. It was a brave one." "I learned that from you and Hazel," Evelyn said, her voice full of gratitude. "You showed me that life isn't a golden cage, but a wild garden where we can grow freely." Liam handed Evelyn a small business card. It was simple, with only his name, phone number, and email address. "When you're ready," he said. "We'll be waiting for you." Evelyn took the card, feeling the roughness of the paper, its authenticity. It was a stark contrast to the glossy, expensive business cards she was used to. This was a promise, an invitation to a real life. Liam and Hazel turned and began walking towards the gate. Evelyn watched their backs, feeling as though a part of her was going with them. She could have returned to her old life, to its luxury and power. But she knew that life no longer belonged to her. Just then, Evelyn's phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Marcus, but a video call from an unknown number. Evelyn hesitated, but then decided to answer. The face of a woman appeared on the screen. It was Catherine, an old friend of Evelyn's, who had once worked for her father. "Evelyn?" Catherine said, her voice full of panic. "I heard about the accident. I tried to find you, but no one would tell me where you were." Evelyn felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't expected anyone to care. "Catherine, I'm okay." "No, you're not," Catherine said, her eyes filled with worry. "I heard about what William did. I knew the accident wasn't random. I've been looking for you everywhere, Evelyn. I want to help you. I've prepared everything. You can come to my place. I have a small house in the countryside where no one can find you. I'll help you start a new life." Evelyn looked at Catherine's face, then at Liam's business card on the table. She had two paths to choose from. One path with an old friend, someone who knew the Evelyn of the past. And another path with a stranger, someone who had helped her find the Evelyn of the present. And as Liam and Hazel disappeared behind the door, Evelyn knew she had made her decision. Evelyn looked at her phone screen, her heart in turmoil. Catherine was a person who had understood the Evelyn of the past, the Evelyn of lavish parties, of board meetings, and of suppressed dreams. But Liam and Hazel represented a new Evelyn, an Evelyn she had only just discovered. "Catherine," Evelyn said, her voice choked with emotion. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for worrying about me. But I can't come to you." "Why?" Catherine asked, her face full of doubt. "Evelyn, I can help you. We can start over together. I know you've lost everything." "No, Catherine." Evelyn said, a bitter smile on her lips. "I haven't lost everything. I found the most precious thing. I found freedom." Catherine didn't understand. "What freedom, Evelyn? Where are you? Who are you talking to?" "I'm at the airport," Evelyn replied, her voice filled with determination. "And I found new friends. They helped me realize that life isn't a golden cage. It's a wild garden where I can grow freely." Catherine was silent, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Evelyn, what are you talking about? Have you been deceived? Where are you? I'll come there right now." "No," Evelyn said, her voice full of resolve. "I haven't been deceived. I've made my decision. Catherine, I have to go." Evelyn ended the call. This time she felt no regret. She had chosen her own path, a path without the interference of her powerful father, or the pity of her old friend. Evelyn looked at Liam's business card on the table. The card was simple, but it carried an immense weight. It was a promise, an invitation to a real life. She decided that she would follow that path. Evelyn looked at her wheelchair, then at the window. She had enough strength to turn the wheels herself, to walk her own path. She knew that path wouldn't be easy. There would be difficulties, there would be challenges. But she was no longer alone. She had a hope, a belief, and a promise to Liam and Hazel. And as Evelyn began to turn the wheels, a radiant smile bloomed on her face. It was the smile of a person who had found freedom, a person who was ready to start a new chapter in her life. Evelyn did not go back to the luxurious lounge. Her wheelchair, once a symbol of her confinement, was now a vehicle of liberation. She propelled it herself slowly and with determination towards the vending machine area. The humming of the fluorescent lights and the smell of bad coffee still lingered there. But in her eyes, it was the scent of freedom. She had spent countless weeks and months just sitting and waiting. Waiting for Marcus to push her, waiting for her father to give orders, waiting for a life that was already programmed. But now, every turn of the wheels was a decision made by her alone. The trembling in her hands was still there, but it wasn't a sign of weakness. It was the tremor of a heart coming back to life. Liam and Hazel were waiting for her. Hazel smiled, pointing at her own coffee cup. "Daddy said you'd come back for another cup of coffee?" Evelyn laughed a bright and genuine laugh. "He was right," she said. "I want another terrible coffee. I think it's the only thing that can get me through today." Liam helped her get another coffee. This time its bitterness was no longer dreadful, but became the taste of life, of choice. She drank it in sips, feeling every drop of the liquid flow into her body, as if she were drinking a new source of energy. "You know," Evelyn said, her eyes full of contemplation, "before I always lived in a world where everything was perfect. Hand-brewed coffees, meticulously prepared meals. My father said that was the way to live. But now I feel that imperfection is the true beauty of life." Liam nodded. "There is beauty that money can't buy. The beauty of freedom, the beauty of choice, the beauty of simple moments." Hazel looked at Liam and Evelyn, then she began to draw. Her new picture was no longer a wild garden. It was an old weathered truck with 3 people sitting inside driving down a sunny road. Evelyn looked at the drawing, then at Liam. She knew this was no coincidence. It was destiny. Destiny had brought her here so she could find freedom, find hope, and find a new family. "I'm not getting on the plane," Evelyn said, her voice filled with conviction. "I'm not going back to my old life. I'm going to start a new life with you." Liam smiled, his smile as warm as the morning sun. "Well then, welcome to the real world, Evelyn Thorne." Evelyn smiled. Her smile was no longer forced, but sincere. She was ready to rewrite her own story, starting with a terrible cup of coffee and an old truck. Evelyn set the paper cup down, a small but decisive sound, like a period at the end of a sentence. The coffee was gone, and the bitter taste in her mouth had given way to the sweetness of a decision. She looked at the thick leather folder on the table, the symbol of her old life, the life her father had painstakingly built for her. Every page of it was filled with flowery language, enormous figures, and detailed plans for every hour of Evelyn Thorne's day. A meeting on Monday, a charity gala on Tuesday, a trip to Paris to sign a contract on Wednesday. Everything was perfect, meticulously arranged. But not a single line spoke of Evelyn, of her dreams, of her pain, or of the people she wanted to meet. Evelyn reached out and took the pen from her bag. Her pen was not a piece of jewelry, but a tool for her to rewrite her life. She placed the tip on the first page of the folder, where the words "Evelyn Thorne's Agenda" were written. Liam and Hazel sat in silence watching her. Liam knew this was not just a simple action, but a ritual, a farewell to the past. Hazel, with a child's innocence, sensed the gravity of the moment. Evelyn took a deep breath, then decisively drew a long, bold line straight through the entire page. The black ink was like a scar dividing everything. She wasn't just crossing out a meeting or a party. She was crossing out a life. She was crossing out the Evelyn Thorne of the past, her father's Evelyn Thorne, to make way for a new Evelyn. She closed the folder, setting it aside as if she were putting down a burden she had carried for too long. A sense of relief spread through her body. She was no longer a puppet and icon. She was a person free and strong. "I don't know what comes next," Evelyn said, her voice full of determination. "But I know that I will find out for myself. No schedule, no plan. Just me and what I want to do." Liam smiled. "And so will we," he said, his voice warm and full of hope. "We will discover it together. Would you like to see our first wild garden?" Evelyn looked at him, then at Hazel. The little girl was smiling, holding the drawing of the old truck. Evelyn knew that the wild garden wasn't a specific place, but a state of mind. Evelyn nodded, a radiant smile on her lips. "Yes," she said. "I would love that. We'll go there together." And as Evelyn began to turn the wheels heading for the exit, she knew she had started a new chapter in her life. A chapter with no control, no constraints, but only freedom and love. The brilliant morning sun shone through the large airport windows, painting sparkling streaks of light on the marble floor. Evelyn, Liam, and Hazel had left the lounge, not heading towards a boarding gate, but towards the parking lot. Evelyn's wheelchair was no longer a burden, but a part of her newfound freedom. Liam gently placed his hand on the wheelchair's handle, not to push, but to walk alongside her. They passed by hurried passengers, people busy with phone calls and packed schedules. Evelyn no longer felt envy or loneliness. She felt a profound peace, a sense of belonging right where she was, with the people she was with. Liam's truck was old but full of life. There were small potted plants, gardening tools, and drawings of wild gardens. Liam helped Evelyn into the truck, carefully storing her wheelchair in the back. Evelyn sat in the middle between Liam and Hazel, feeling warmth and safety. Liam drove out of the airport, away from the world of private jets and luxury cars. They drove on small roads lined with lush green fields and ancient trees. Evelyn looked out the window, her eyes full of wonder and excitement. She hadn't seen this world in 2 years. "Where are we going first?" Evelyn asked, her voice eager. Liam smiled. "We're going to a piece of land I bought a few years ago. It's in a small, very quiet rural area. I've always dreamed of turning it into a wild garden where we can plant all the flowers we want. A place where we can live a simple life, unconstrained by anything." Evelyn looked at him, then at Hazel, who was smiling radiantly. The little girl had drawn a new picture, a picture of the three of them standing in a sunny garden, holding shovels and hoes. Evelyn knew that this was not just a journey to the countryside, but a journey to find herself again. She had lost her first love, but she had found something even more precious. A family, a hope, and a new life unconstrained by anything. Liam's truck rolled on, carrying 3 people on a new road. Evelyn looked out the window, the morning sun shining on her face, brightening her eyes. She was no longer afraid. She was ready to continue writing her story, starting with a wild garden and an old truck.